The thought that was going through my mind when Deacon Larry was reading that scripture, that gospel, was beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. Because what we see isn't always what we get. Then I was thinking, every time we gather en masse, every time as the L we gather en masse, we always pause. And a pause is to look into our hearts, to see that the inside, what we really are, that sometimes people can't see, is hopefully what we portray. So that there's a consistency between the inner life and the outer life. Because we know, those of us that are old enough, we learned many years ago the roles we had to play, didn't we, in life? And so sometimes we call it like being a mask, like Greek actors. But we all have to play roles. But the tragedy is when we don't connect what is really in our heart and really in our soul. And that's why I believe we come here. That's why we listen to the scriptures and hopefully read them also on our own, in our own homes, so that we can become the authentic person we're called to be. Yes, we do play roles, but we can't lose sight of what we really are. I'm always sad when I speak to young adults and they tell me, well, I'm studying accountancy or I'm studying engineering. I say, whoa, wow. Do you enjoy it? Not so much, Father. Oh dear. What would you like to study? I remember one man, I said, I'd really like to study theology and teach theology. Doesn't pay as much money, Sylvia. But there's the tragedy when what's in our heart that we feel truly called to be isn't what we do. Isn't what we do. And that is our vocation, to be true to who and what we are as children of God. Carl Jung says, to own one's own shadow, that which is hidden, is to reach a holy place, an inner center, not attainable in any other way. To fail this is to fail one's sainthood and miss the purpose of life. But of course, there can be tricks on the way, can't there, as to what we really call to do? When I was just trying to think, what did I first ever want to be? And I remember reading a book about a vagabond. I can't remember what the book was. And I thought, yes, that's what I'd like to do. I think I'd like to travel from place to place and country to country. I have no idea how I'd do it or who'd pay for it. But I thought that would be kind of interesting. And then I guess I did in part fulfill it. But what seems attractive at some times might not always be the real thing. So all that glitters isn't gold. So that's why we have to discern. And that beautiful image of the wheat in the field. I come from a rural part of England, so it was always beautiful when harvest time came and you saw these big combine harvesters bringing in the wheat. And that wonderful instruction from Jesus about, okay, yeah, there's weeds, but we're going to do more damage than good if we uproot them too soon. And that is the nature of the God we worship in Jesus Christ, that was so beautifully proclaimed in the first reading from Wisdom. And the tiniest part I took from it was that God is always kind. And isn't that a wonderful way? Wouldn't you want to be called, described, as a kind person. And so hopefully that is what we strive for. And our kindness, hopefully, enables us to look at other people differently. And thank goodness that we are not the ones who are called to judge. We're not the ones to say, wheat, wheat, wheat. That's not our vocation. Our vocation is to find out who we are authentically and to be patient with people. And that's sometimes a small order, a tall order. I love driving down to the island of Galveston around about the end of April and the beginning of May, and I-45 turns into Broadway, and when you get to about 40th Street, you see the cemetery on the right. And it's always filled with the most glorious golden flowers, blue-eyed, black-eyed Susie. I love to see it. And so I looked up yesterday if they were weeds or not. And apparently I couldn't find out what Texas thinks of black-eyed Susies, but New South Wales, they're thought of as weeds. Well, we have to be careful. I wonder who decided at one time, I'm going to get rid of that. Walking past a new building near Starbucks, I don't know what it's going to be, shops probably, just down here on Washington. The grass is all grown very thick and very tall, and there's the most beautiful blue flowers. I guess they're thought of as weeds as well. We have to be careful what we judge as being beautiful. And God is the one who has the final say. But here's a thought from Jeff Hill. He's talking about the garden that he first planted. But I've come to know the flowers so well. And you know, they too have blossoms, quite tiny and blue and purple and pale and orange. They're not so foul, they're quite fair, and admirably persistent creatures of God. And that's what we're called to be, the flowers that God created us to be under His grace. And that's why we belong to this garden. That's why we worship in this space. That's why we watch from homes, desiring to become the very flowers that God has called us to be under His grace, under His mercy, and as they are, under His kindness.